Hey Snapchat, today I want to talk about how to nail speeches or presentations in front of large crowds. The tips I'm going to give you today will apply whether or not you're doing overhead presentation slides or just a speech. The most important thing before you even work on a speech or a presentation is to figure out what your narrative is going to be. We've all sat through presentations where 5 minutes after we've seen it, we can't really remember what it was they talked about. Humans don't have the ability to remember many details, so having a simple, well thought through narrative matters. Think of narrative as a theme. What is the thread of the point that you're trying to make across your presentation? If you don't have a thesis, if you don't have a point you're trying to make or something you're trying to prove, it's likely that your speech or presentation won't hold together. Start with the narrative. If you do build slides, as you build slides, you want to tie them together as part of this narrative that you wrote in advance. The narrative can be nothing more than bullet points that outline the theme of your speech, and those become the headlines of many of your slides. If you're doing a speech with no slides, the same holds. Having a narrative matters. The second thing to remember is simplicity. You remember, I already told you, most people won't remember what you said after you were done. We also live in an era where people are distracted by mobile devices or computers. If you're not simple, people will tune out. So I know you want to load us with a bunch of facts, figures, and details. That's not what makes a great presentation. Trust me, strong, compelling narrative and simplicity. But here's what else. You actually need repetition of key points if you want people to remember anything after you were done. The old rule of giving a speech was tell me what you're going to tell me, then remind me what you told me. You want to do it authentically so it doesn't sound like you're doing that, but there is some truth to making that point. I often start presentations by saying something like, if there's anything I want you to take away from today, it's this. Then I deliver my talk, whether it's 5 minutes, 20 minutes, or an hour. And then I always try to come back at the end and say, this is what I want you to remember. Nothing could have a more profound impact on how people perceive what you say than vocal variety. The simple truth is, great content that's delivered monotonely and in a voice like this and constantly just going like this and putting me to sleep it doesn't matter at all what you're saying, because the more that you tend to talk like this or in a repetitive voice, people start to zone out and they stop paying attention and they don't know what's important. The important thing about speaking is pacing. So it's things like pausing for effect. You can talk at a normal pace and cadence, but then say, now this is what I want you to focus on. Vocal variety doesn't have to be loud. It can be soft and slow. It can try to make an emotional point. But we as humans tend to tune out those things that are monotonous, so vocal variety matters. A friend once taught me many years ago that loud and evocative speeches always do well. People barely pay attention to what you're saying. Number 5, pacing matters. Be thoughtful about what you're going to cover in your presentation. Don't try to cram too much in. And pacing also has to deal with this concept of vocal variety, where vocal variety might be loud or emotional. Pacing is about the pace at which you talk. So some things can be fast. Other things need to be delivered slowly. The final point I want to make is about energy, the energy by which you present. I flippantly talked earlier about loud and evocative, but honestly, here's the truth. While being energetic and loud won't make you a great speaker, being boring and monotonous and low energy will also make you bad. Literally every time before I speak, I always take some private time before I go out on stage, and I try to clear my mind, I try to relax, and I try to remind myself that my job is to come out there with high energy and impact. I have a bonus point for those who stuck around. Know your audience. Let me explain. You can ask any conference organizer I work with. I always obsess before I talk to them about who is going to be in the audience. How senior are they? How junior are they? How knowledgeable? How informed? Who else is speaking at the event? What does the audience want to hear about? What do we think they care about? Do they understand tech? Do they understand venture capital? Are they early in their careers? Are they slightly older? Know your audience. It's like a comedian. You've got to have that rapport and energy and connection with your audience. I can't go to a crowd of older Orange County private equity professionals and talk about MVP. But I equally can't go to a bunch of young 22-year-olds and start talking about IRRs and return rates of later growth stage companies. If you want to improve your public speaking, you should join a Toastmasters nearby where you live. It's a great organization and a great chance to practice.